what about the other parts of their journey? What about the parts where God's grace comes in, where healing happens, where resources are there, where we don't take on that part. We only take on the heaviness and the weight. And
welcome to The Discerning Mother, the podcast for Jesus-loving moms who want to tune out the noise and tune into God's design for motherhood. I'm Brigid, a board-certified women's health coach, holistic health practitioner, birth nerd, and homeschooling mom of 5. I help moms to heal their minds and bodies, trust their instincts, and embrace the beauty of the way God created them. Here we talk about birth, hormones, motherhood, faith, and anything else. Let's go. All right, welcome back to The Discerning Mother. Today I'm here with Marnee, and I'm super excited to chat. We were connected via My Catholic Doctor because we're both on there, and I heard some cool information about her, so I reached out and wanted to chat a little bit. So welcome to the show, Marnee.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to come on.
I really wanted to touch on a lot of what you write about and what you do, and so I'll just give you a little introduction, then I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself a little bit. So Marnee is a limited licensed professional counselor who works part-time via telehealth from her home, and she lives with her husband Darren and their 2-year-old daughter Rosalina. She's currently pregnant with her 5th pregnancy, due in early December, and Marnee and her family live in Michigan and enjoy taking toddler-friendly adventures when they're able, while also soaking in their quiet home life where her husband also works from home too. That's amazing that you guys both get to work from home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that tricky though sometimes whenever you have both of you guys there?
I don't know. It's worked out pretty well. Maybe today was a little tricky because he has appointments while I do. And it was a space thing of like, where are we going? And I forgot you had an appointment. And so like, but our house has like little 4 mini levels. So there's like different rooms and stuff. And so we work it out, but we haven't gotten tired of each other yet. Like we're here all day, every day. And like, it's just been really good. So yeah.
That's awesome. Was there anything else that you want listeners to know about you?
Let's see here. Yeah. So that kind of covers it. I've been working as a therapist for the past 4 years or so, and just a year ago. And so my husband is a life coach. So we just started a counseling, coaching Catholic business about a year ago. And since then we've taken on 3 more mental health therapists, clinicians. So it's growing, which is really exciting. And then I just co-authored a book that was published for Catholic women a couple months ago. So that's another new exciting thing. And just this pregnancy, kind of a high risk pregnancy situation. So, but 15 weeks today and coming out of the worst of as we were talking about, the nausea and the sickness. So so life is looking pretty good right now. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so glad that you're feeling well, especially around 15 weeks. That usually is kind of the turning point. So that's awesome.
On this end.
I can't wait to hear more about your husband and your business. And then, give me 1 second. I think you're frozen.
There you are.
I don't know what happened. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just leave this one.
For some reason, just in the last week, my computer has been hating Riverside, and I don't know why. So sorry about that. Okay, so can you tell me more about this new business that you and your husband have together?
Yeah, so it started as just the coaching side of things. A few years ago, right before we got married, he was already getting into coaching, so we started that up. And I was just working for a group practice as a contracted therapist. But last year, he actually started studies to also be a mental health counselor, and things were just shifting in such a way that it suddenly made sense for us to have our own business and kind of tackle that, which was always a daunting idea. But so we built it up. So we have a kind of a therapy business called Genesis Counseling under the umbrella of our coaching business, Crux Leadership Coaching. So we do both, and we really kind of lean into the Catholic identity for both. And so we've just started bringing on, as I was saying, a few more clinicians, Catholic clinicians, and we're open to bringing in, Catholic life coaches. We're not looking to get, super big, but we'd like to be able to offer services that kind of are well-rounded and that Catholics can come to feeling comfortable with that. Here in Michigan, there aren't too many Catholic identity practices like that. So it's been a lot of work to start up, but it's rolling fairly smoothly now. So we're happy that we did it.
That's awesome. It's so cool to see too that you're incorporating both the mental health therapy side of it and also the coaching side of it too. Because sometimes it feels like those are very 2 distinct arenas. So it's how has it been to kind of blend the 2 of those together?
Well, as it has been so far, my husband, he has a lot of experience through his life and even prior to us getting married, where he worked a lot with sort of leadership work, leaders, in different industries. And so he kind of naturally came in with these abilities and talents to coach people in professional business settings. He's done some, corporate consultations, crisis management, things like that. So that was definitely, his forte. And then in my side, on the therapy side, is a little different. And there's differences in taking insurance versus not. But I've also found that as a therapist, I can see anyone in Michigan, as a licensed therapist. But for those who are outside of Michigan looking for some solid Catholic sort of just accompaniment or advice or experience or conversation, that branches me out into the life coaching field as well, which I've done a little bit of. And I really enjoy it. So there is a lot of crossover. There definitely has to be a distinction in our paperwork and our verbiage and our, I don't do treatment plans and that kind of thing as a life coach. But yeah, just they're both fields that just walk with people and it can just be so beneficial to be able to really integrate the Catholic side of things, because it's just its own world, right? Being a Catholic, there's all of this culture and all of this language and all this experience, that being able to bring that into however you're walking with someone is so valuable. So yeah, it's been really interesting. So we'll both have that crossover. I can do some life coaching in a couple of years. He'll have his degree to be a counselor as well. And we'll just keep kind of navigating those different roles and meeting people kind of with what they need. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. Super interesting. And so you have one child, 2 years old, right?
Yes, almost 2.5. Yep, our little Rosalina.
How has that been going?
That's been good. I mean, she's at this age now that I find is super adorable and delightful, and just the communication is really good, but the whole journey of motherhood has been a major transition, the major challenges in there. So I had her when I was 34, I lose track, 35 maybe. So that's kind of, for me, having lived many years single and childless, I worked with children quite a bit. So that wasn't new, but having a child, your child, and being a mom was just a major transition that kind of took everything for a long time. And so every time she kind of graduated to the next milestone or the next ability or the next level of communication, it was very exciting for me because it just kind of made things smoother and easier. So I love this age that she's at now. It's a super fun age. She has way more energy than I do, of course, but yeah.
That's great. So can you tell me more about this new book that you have that just came out? Because you sent a little blurb out. Again, we're both part of My Catholic Doctor. And so you sent out a little blurb to everybody, and it sounded so great that that's why I wanted to reach out to you. So yeah, can you tell us more about it?
Yes, absolutely. So you kind of started this by saying, we're just having a conversation to see where it goes. And that is very similar to the inspiration for this book. The book is called Conversations for the Modern Catholic Woman. So the idea of it, sometimes it's hard to track, right? Where did it come from? But I know some of it came from just working with women, having a heart for women for many years, certainly working with women in the therapy realm now for a handful of years, and being a woman and having friends who are women and just kind of being tuned in and hearing a lot of similar things, right? And in my world, a lot of those women are Catholic women. So you have some unique situations to being a Catholic woman, being a single Catholic woman, to being, a discerning Catholic woman, to being someone who's trying to be a faithful Catholic amidst all of these challenges out there. And so as I heard kind of similar struggles and questions and obstacles over and over and over again, I would find that, having also worked through some of them myself, being able to speak to those, what I think is just kind of some clarity and some truth, just seemed to be very helpful, to many women. So I kind of got to the point where you kind of feel like I just want to put this out there, if it's helpful to more beyond me and my circle. And, and I have a good friend and colleague from counseling school who had kind of a similar thing on her heart, thoughts. And she's a therapist as well, of course. And so we had thought maybe a podcast or something like that, but that version didn't speak to me as much, but we weren't really sure what we were going to do with it. And then one morning I just kind of was like, well, let's kind of turn it into a conversational book, maybe. Like that to me felt more, I don't know, that just felt like the thing to do. And so I pulled in like over 20 other women to just, give little thoughts. And we just broke it up into like 12 themes relating to womanhood, dating, finding the right man, marriage, motherhood, the Catholic Church, work and service, and all these things common themes I was hearing come up. And then just kind of shared thoughts about it. It's to me, I just find sort of the like on the ground experience so interesting. Like, what have we actually heard? What have we actually experienced? What's, because it can, there's just a lot of information out there, and sometimes it's hard to like, where did that information come from? Or, like what's people's real experience here? So yeah, it was a great process. I enjoyed doing it. It took about a year to write it and just published in April. And it's a pretty simple, easy to read volume, but yeah, just kind of excited to see how, if it's helpful to women, interesting, kind of what the feedback is there. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so, you sent like a picture of everything like that. It's just a beautiful cover. It's like, it really does draw you in. And so I'd love to know, with everything that you put into this book, like talking to the women and all of the different backgrounds that you saw, like what were some of the common themes throughout the book, but through the conversations that you had with these women, what are some of the common themes that you picked up on?
Well, one thing that comes to mind is just as we started exploring certain things, or let's say, we like took one of the chapters. The first chapter is on beauty and femininity. So we would have these Zoom meetings occasionally to talk about things. And let's say that topic was just brought up, like, let's just talk about it and kind of see, there's just so much thought about it, so much experience about it. And I just find that just the conversation around it so edifying. So, and I think there was kind of this theme of a lot of women being able to identify with just some of the points, some of the content, like for instance, beauty, how to be a feminine woman, how to be a woman, who is like kind of like feminine in the eyes of the church. Like, what does that mean? Like many people got a message, well, you have to be like Mary, for instance. Well, what does that mean? There's different pictures of Mary painted. Like, I know some people commented on like how, she's usually portrayed in sort of this demure and sort of like maybe quiet, submissive, sort of, I don't know, passive is probably not the right word, but just a certain persona. And that is not the personality of so many women, right? So then where do I fit? Or, in terms of like modesty, right? Which is kind of a trigger word, sometimes. What does that mean? And like, when are you are there boundaries you're crossing? And if so, why? And why is there so much shame around how we dress or how we, towards ourselves, towards other women? Where does like the role of men come into that, this question of modesty and beauty and femininity and all these things. So that was a big one. And then another big one is also like, well, maybe they're all big in their own way, but like dating, right? The dating world, trying to find your spouse, which some people will of course become religious or consecrated, but most of us we're looking for our spouse. And what a challenging road that is, especially, I got married at 34. And so many women I know, right? That like it's happening later, even later than that. I mean, my co-author, she's having sort of her second marriage, but her, true kind of finding her true match now and getting married in a few months at 50 years old, And so what it's like to just go through those seasons, you want to navigate them well, you want to navigate them with God, you want to be good and all these things, but they are so hard, like mentally, just how you make it through that. Yeah, just a lot of messages out there, I think, to be unpacked about what it means to be just sort of this good, holy, striving Catholic woman. As a therapist, I run into it so much, right? These sort of, we might call them schemas or pathologies or lies or wounds, or whatever you want to call them, that people come in with that means that say, I have to do certain things, be a certain way, check certain boxes. And when you're not able to do that, because the expectations might be a bit unrealistic or perfectionistic, you can kind of get into this inner turmoil of like, am I doing okay? Am I being holy? So just trying to like maybe bring clarity and unpack and like open up a lot of those things and just talk about them. Like maybe some of these things you're thinking you have to be and do are not accurate. They're not correct. And that's not what God's asking. It's just what's been kind of maybe distorted or passed down, for various reasons. And we have to kind of turn the page, and like figure out what's really true here for being a Catholic woman, mother, wife. So yeah, I find it also fascinating.
Yeah, and that's so true in the birth world as well. Like, I talk about this all the time about how we've sort of lost the understanding of what birth can look like and like what God created it to look like. And so the number of women who actually understand what physiological birth looks like is so slim. And so, like you said, it's been distorted and we don't even know what it looks like anymore. And it's the same thing with pretty much everything else in our life as well, where it's, again, we don't really understand what the original intent was or what the original design was, which can feel really difficult and really frustrating at times. Were there any stories from women that like really surprised you or really stood out or that you still remember today?
It's a great question. I think I've heard so many wild stories, especially as a therapist. Well, one story that was kind of shared in parts in the book that that was kind of unique and interesting is a woman who, had experienced different aspects of the Catholic woman life. Like she had been in consecrated life a little bit, and that had been an experience that had actually been like detrimental to her health. For some reason, she had lost a ton of weight and lost her cycle, and came out and just felt this great love from God that he was kind of not asking her to stay in a life that was, not working for her, even though she had a positive experience while she was there. And so she kind of came out and I think just had a lot of just trust of, I don't know what's going to happen next, but, trusting. And she got married and her cycle still had not come back. And so, her and her husband, began adopting and adopted, 3 beautiful children. And then at some point in there, later in life, they kind of get a surprise pregnancy. Her cycle comes back, and it's just interesting for her that it was about at the age of 40 that her cycle was kind of like fully normal and functioning again. They ended up having 3 children of their own, I think. But just kind of like in the midst of that, also they took in foster children at some points, and just kind of this like flex to whatever God was bringing and calling, and like just not the normal path or, things not operating the way you would think, but still coming out with this just beautiful life experience. And just now a woman, she's just so full of joy and gratitude, just that God had, had caused all these things to happen that didn't seem like they were going to happen. And anyway, so I find her story very interesting. But yeah, she has a lot of parts of it in the book. But yeah, even some of the experiences of my co-author, just in her journey with the faith and with marriage and dating and all these things she's been through. I think I find, so many of the stories really interesting. Yeah, I even find my own story interesting. I think I just love hearing like about people's experiences and all the different twists and turns that happen.
I'm the same way where I just love hearing other people's stories and like everything that they've been through in life, and to look back, it's almost like that hindsight where it's like you can look back and see like, oh, this is why this thing happened. And at the time it felt really terrible and really awful, but now I see why it had to happen so that I could be at this place and then to just see how it all connects. Mm-hmm. I can't wait until, God willing, I get to heaven and I can look back and be like, this is why this happened. And then I could to see the web of everything. I think it's going to be so cool if I'm given the honor to do that. I think it's so amazing how those little things that maybe we take for granted, or the big things that feel like impossible and they're just going to be too hard to do, they are actually the things that really set us up for, again, hopefully sanctification and leaning more into God's will. Mm-hmm. But again, it can feel really hard about that sometimes whenever it feels like the world is ending because of this big thing that's happening in your life. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a type of reflection that I use a lot just with my own journey, like the unpacking of how it played out the way that it did, which was not what I was expecting or wanting. But now, being at such a good point in life, but how did I get here? I mean, so many things that I've always wanted, I now have. So that part, kind of lines up. But there were a lot of challenging things that had to be gone through to get here. And I think it took a while, or maybe still in process, kind of like I know in your work, I think you touch a lot on kind of this this unpacking of like birth traumas and PTSD. And it's kind of like, what happened there and how's it affecting you now, and and I think a lot of my traumas in a way were those seasons of, all the waiting for kind of the life that I was wanting and hoping and expecting, like that it took a lot longer, and the dating experiences and the disappointments and the delays and unexpected life turns, and like to me that was kind of like little traumas that it took, even in the beginning of my marriage was like, I'm still processing this stuff. Like, I think I'm still mad about it, or I'm still like, experiencing kind of the fallout of it. And it just takes a while to unpack it. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to touch on, is that like sometimes things take longer for people to get to where, okay, so basically like some women might think, oh, I'm going to get married at, I don't know, I'm making this up, 22, have a baby at 24, and like have these things in a row. Mm-hmm. And like everything will be great and everything will be fine. Like it'll be great. But then when that doesn't happen until 34, 35, 50, whatever mm-hmm. it is, then that can feel really hard. And like, why is this happening to me? But I think one thing that we don't always talk about is that even those who have been on, and I'm not trying to like compare the two, because you cannot compare the two, but even those that are on like the quote, like typical path of like get married young, have baby, like so on and so on. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like it's just like, we don't talk about how hard that can be as well. Because I work with moms who have some of the moms have a lot of kids, like 9, 10, 12 kids. And so they love it. It's beautiful, everything like that. But they also feel kind of like, I don't want to say bogged down because that's not the right word, but there's just so much there. And sometimes they do want like a little bit of peace and quiet. But then there's also like the women who aren't married until 50 and they've had all the peace and quiet and they just want like the chaos and they want the craziness. So it's like, I think it's really important to acknowledge that no matter what you like, what your story is or where you are in your story, it's important to acknowledge that it's okay if it feels like it's not really where you want to be right now. And that's really normal. And it's just God's way of inviting us into deeper relationship with him so that we can give those like anxieties, fears, annoyances, we can give that all up to him and he can use that again for our sanctification. I think that's super important to recognize too.
Yeah. Yeah. Each person kind of has within their story is like the ups and downs and the struggles and the triumphs and stuff. And I think like, I think, whatever that stage is, it's like, just makes me think of like, St. Paul, kind of that I know we all strive for, just kind of this, like, if times are good, if they're bad, if they're what I want, if they're not, just trying to find the like sort of peace and acceptance wherever that is. And I think for those who are like, I think for myself, the many years of single life, I didn't want all those years, but when I could get to the point that I could sort of shift my perspective and be like, okay, just because this doesn't have all the things that I want in it or whatever, like there actually are some things I really want in it. And it's like, it's almost like you have to, it's this funny inner struggle where sometimes, at least, and I can speak more, obviously, it's the prolonged single time, but it's almost like you feel like you can't, like, can I be okay with this in a sense? Like, can I give myself permission to like really actually, kind of delight in this time? Not always, there's still going to be a struggle. There's still going to, but like, and maybe that's because of like, well, what if I become like too comfortable in a certain state and then I don't grow? Or maybe like I'm, like, am I getting complacent or am I like losing? I don't know. It's all this mind stuff happens, but I think like, sometimes we're really honest, like as I kind of sorted through my own like wounds or traumas or whatever, and was just trying to get really honest, I could say like, okay, my dream was, married at 23, 10 kids. Here I am, married at 34, 1 kid, 3 miscarriages, a second one coming. And pregnancy is super hard and I don't really enjoy pregnancy. So anyway, so many things different. But if I'm honest and I look at a life where, let's say I was married at 23 and I did have 10 kids, as much as I wanted that for so many years and thought that was me and thought that was like the life to have, when I look back on the life I did have, that was pretty good too. And honestly, I think that was a better fit for me. Like, if I'm being really honest, like I think for me and just who I am and what I love and what I thrive on and all these things that I've learned, like, I think that was a better fit. It's just kind of like I have to have the humility to like really get there. and really let go of all the grief and the disappointment and the frustration and the injustice or whatever is in there for me, and like be able to kind of embrace, where things are at. So, but part of that is recognizing that, yeah, if I did get married at 23 and have 10 kids, that there's a lot of challenge in that life. Like there's a lot of challenge that I didn't have by not, so it is kind of like the challenge is just kind of different. Yeah. So it's tough though. When you're in the tough seasons, I mean, especially as a therapist and working in trauma and things like that, I think just a big reality is when you're in a really hard season, like for instance, this season that I was just in with the nausea and the hyperemesis gravidarum and just when you're in that season, you're in some kind of trauma, whatever it is, like you can't really see beyond it. That's just kind of how it works. And that's okay. Like you may have people trying to say like, well, it's going to turn out well, and you're going to have a baby and things are going to be so good. Well, that may be true, but you can't really enter into that. Like your mind that part shut off, like all you can do is survive right now. And that's okay to just survive. Like yes, the time will come when you can reason through things, you can process through things, you can experience more joy and hopefulness. But maybe that's just not right now. Like, and you don't have to put that pressure on yourself to like try to have this positive outlook or this hopefulness or this like, it's just not the season you're in. You're just trying to get through the day and you're just trying to do the best you can. And the good thing is that will only be a season. We don't know how long all the time, but it will only be a season. But that's just where it is. And you don't have to, kind of push yourself to be somewhere else, wherever that is for you, whatever that is. So
thanks for sharing that, especially so honestly about like where you are and where you were. And again, just sharing that. I think that's one thing that some women, myself included, sometimes don't want to look back on, or sometimes don't want to think about, like maybe if I actually did have this happen, like, I can't really like put words to it, but maybe if this thing that I really wanted to happen actually did happen, I wouldn't be at the place where I am now in terms of, again, striving towards holiness. And so I think that that's important to mention that, because again, a lot of us just think like, well, I'm here right now and like, it's fine, but not looking back and be like, well, what did I learn from this? Like, where was God maybe actually calling me to? No, we never know for sure. Like acknowledging that we needed those times, we needed these experiences to bring us to where we are now. Yeah, I think that that's just really important to think about and to touch on. So, okay. And so has it been really challenging to take what you hear from clients in terms of trauma and the really hard things that they have gone through? And how do you stay present to them without also taking on that trauma yourself? Because that's one thing that I have some clients say is that their sister-in-law or their sister is going through something really hard and they want to help them, but they feel like if they try to help them, then they're going to kind of get, I don't want to say sucked down, but like kind of sucked down into like that pit of sympathy with them. So how do you navigate?
Yeah. And it's probably even a little different in the clinical relationship than in this, as you're saying, like a very personal relationship with a loved one. Yeah. In a clinical relationship, they, the program I went through, it was a very balanced program, a Catholic centered program at Divine Mercy University. And they, I kind of feel like they trained us well in, how to be empathetic and present. But yeah, you can't take it home with you, really. I mean, as a counselor, that's just burnout, very quickly, because you're always hearing difficult things. So, and this is a tangent, but since you're bringing it up, empathy is something that a lot of us, or some of us, don't actually grow up knowing how to do really well. That's a tough thing. You kind of have to, or let's say as a counselor in training, like I had to kind of, first of all, learn, okay, well, exactly how does empathy work, and how do you, like, just in normal life, how do you do it well? And then how do you, do it well in professional life? Because if you grow up in a situation where emotions are, let's say, weaponized, they're dangerous, and that can be a whole other topic, right? You don't show or express or, feel emotion, like that's shut off. But that doesn't work when you're a counselor. Like, you do have to be able to have that capacity. So I think it was kind of like a bit of a crash course, maybe in that sense for me of, okay, so, and I think it involves sort of tapping into, how would I say it? Kind of like tapping into, I guess, just your like deep humanness, like here's this human in front of me and they're saying these things that are just so terrible, or just so, it's almost like reading how it's kind of impacting them, and kind of like, and really kind of taking in the weight of what they're saying, and allow that to kind of be reflected in what you're taking in, but in a sense, kind of like giving it its moment, right? Like you're fully engaged in the moment, and you want to, very like empathetically connected there, but it's that moment, and then we kind of move on to another moment, meaning that you, just the meaning that you're kind of not taking it with you. You're in it in the moment, and you're expressing it, and you're feeling it, and but then you get into this boundary place, which maybe also applies to these personal relationships, where you kind of have to realize that if you carry this, like if you feel like it's your job to carry the burden of this trauma the same as this other person, because another thing, if you grew up in a situation where you felt like you had to emotionally carry your parents or people in your family who couldn't manage their own emotions, that's your role. Your role is to be the emotional caretaker of your people. And that's what and you feel like if you don't do that, you're failing people. Or where's your value, right? You've lost your value, your role, because, people are not going to love you, and everything if you're not in this role. Okay. So that's a point where you have to figure out this boundary of me taking on what they're experiencing, almost like being them, like that actually doesn't help anyone. That doesn't help anyone, because first of all, we have to understand it's their journey. It's their life story. And we need to let it be their life story. And we need to let our life story be ours, because ours is enough for us. Like it is. When we start to feel like we have to take on other people's life story, that's a bit of a God role, right? Only God can handle everybody's life story out there and take on all that hurt and all that emotion. Like he's God, he's infinite. He can do that. But we're not, and therefore we're not called to do that, which means we're not helping anyone by doing that. Like that's not our role, because if we burn ourselves out on somebody else's trauma, like you see how that takes away our ability to help them, help ourselves, help the people in our life that we've been given. But also I think it's really interesting to just realize that the culture that we're in has this interesting, well, it's a pendulum, right? It's usually to one extreme or another. But it kind of has this interesting dialogue going on that sort of says you need to sort of be a martyr for all of these different emotional needs and causes out there. And if you're not, then you're the opposite. Maybe you're some kind of like hater or something. You can never step in someone's shoes, right? So what you're doing is you're imagining, you're perceiving, you come up with this idea of what it's like in their shoes, and you take that on, right? That's what you're doing. But you're only taking on the suffering. You're only taking on the trauma, on the hurt, on the emotional burden. What about the other parts of their journey? What about the parts where God's grace comes in, where healing happens, where resources are there, where we don't take on that part. We only take on the heaviness and the weight. And what we do by that is we do turn ourselves into a bit of a martyr, and we burn ourselves out in the name of, I don't know, empathy or sanctity or Arianism or something. And it's very imbalanced. It's very imbalanced. So we have to recognize that when someone else is going through something in their journey, yes, we can be there in that hard. We can sit by them. We can hold their hand. We can listen. We can be present. But we got to realize that, as with us, everything happens in a time and a season, and God's continually working with that person. So they may walk away from us, and maybe, there's a movement of grace that happens, and they get some insight or some relief or some assistance. But we walk away, and if we're still carrying that burden for the next, day, weeks, months, like we're not on that journey with them, really. We're kind of doing a projected journey with them, and we're just bogging ourselves down, So anyway, so for all those reasons, it's just like, in case we need the permission to not sort of take on everything we think they're going through, that just gives us some permission to, like, it doesn't really work. It doesn't really make sense. It's not, it's not realistic, and it doesn't help them. When someone's going through a time of great trial and suffering, mostly it's kind of a being with, I'm here. And then you put up the boundaries that you need so that you can still live your journey, It's a hard thing. Like, it really is. Like, people we love, when they're suffering, it's like you want to do anything you can to, like, resolve that suffering for them, So yeah, anyway, those are just kind of my thoughts on that.
Yeah. No, that was all so good. So many great tips and tricks there. And I'm a visual person. So one of the visuals that I like to use is if somebody is in like a literal pit and they're stuck down there and like you're up at the top. I just picture little stick figures. Like you're up at the top, the person's down in the pit, and sympathy is like you jump down in the pit with them and then you're both stuck in the pit and there's like no way to get out, versus having this like this solid empathy, this healthy empathy is where you ask them like, hey, what do you need? What tools do you need to help get yourself out of this pit? Like, I'm here to help you, but I can't go down with you because if I do, then we're both stuck. And if he says like, I need a ladder, then you throw down the ladder. Or if he needs like a shovel or like a pick or something, then you just throw down the tools to help them instead of, again, jumping down in there with them. And so that's one thing I always try to keep in mind too, is that, I don't know why, the visual just makes so much sense to me for it. But okay, this is awesome. And so before we finish up, I always ask one question which is, what do you want the discerning mother to know?
Yes. And I think my answer to that sometimes changes, and I have to think of like, what does it feel like today? One thing that I was, when I was reflecting on motherhood a while back, and I kind of, I think I made a little video about it, is that it kind of occurred to me that like when you're trying to talk about motherhood or like understand motherhood or whatever, conceptualize it, that it can feel like there's sort of these two different, to generalize, right? Two major forces sometimes at play right now, like in our culture, kind of two converging, one kind of coming from maybe like years past and one that's much more recent ways of thinking about it or ways of expressing it. And so the older kind of version, I would sum up by saying it was more of a kind of like, you tough it out. This is just how it is. This is happens to every mother. This, you just kind of get through, not a lot of complaining or explaining or sharing, like with your husbands or with other women. Like there's just kind of like, this is what you do. And being a mother is a great gift and a blessing. And think about all the, historically children who have not survived, and all these things would just say like, it's a great thing to be a mother, it's a great thing to have children, all this kind of thing. So you kind of close off that ability to sort of focus on the negative. And then the much more modern version is like, you kind of feel everything and you express everything, and even the minutia of the struggles of the day, like, we share those and we commiserate about those. And wow, motherhood is actually super hard. Like there can be kind of a special emphasis on that, because it's like, whoa, we didn't hear this from our moms and our grandmas or whatever, like this is hard and that's hard and this is hard. And like, I don't even know if I want to be a mother to many children, or I don't know if I want to go through this, and I have these choices, and I have so much choice over how my family looks or doesn't look. Like I'm weighing all these different factors. And, so those two are kind of interesting, like if you're all in one camp or the other, obviously we can see now in contrast, there could be a bit of an imbalance, right? Because, bringing the two together says, okay, being a mother is a wonderful gift and doesn't happen to everyone. So that, that's something to be really grateful for, but it does have its challenges, and we need to be able to, find support for those challenges. We don't want to bury those challenges. We don't want to pretend they're not there. We definitely don't want to, bury experiences that are going to slowly kind of eat away at us, right? But we also find if we focus too much on the struggle and the negative and the hardship, that can bring us down. It can discourage us. It can make us very unhappy in this state of life that we're in. So there's just kind of like balance going on of like, I think just kind of understanding maybe, because again, you might have a mother or mother-in-law or grandmother who is like, what's going on with all this, kind of talking and complaining and, like, and then you might have, some girlfriends who are like, oh my gosh, your life sounds terrible. I would just never want to do that and be a mom, So you have just kind of to balance those and realize like if something about your inner narrative is causing an issue in your own experience, like just kind of checking in on that and kind of continually, right? Like continually trying to find the balance there, I think. So yeah.
Yeah. That's so good. Basically what you just said, summing it all up, finding that balance. It's so hard, but it's so necessary, because if you don't, it's just going to trickle into every other area of your life as well. So it's so, so important to just, like you said, find that balance. That's so good. And so if people want to get in touch with you, find the new book, how can they go ahead and do that?
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon, Conversations with a Modern Catholic Woman. Also, the website that we have for the book is Pursuit of Beauty Media. So that's kind of our publishing name, pursuitofbeautymedia.com. And that has, info about the book and us as authors and everything. Yeah, so those should. And then you can always, of course, search my name, but my name is kind of complicated, so it doesn't, but you probably see it somewhere and you can search that too. So yeah, but hopefully it's a great resource for women.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely be linking all of those below. And thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your knowledge with us. We really appreciate it. And again, I'll be linking all those below.
Great. Thank you so much, Brigid.